So here's how to repair the hand. I'm going to come in closer on this, come over here to your geometry, put that onto reference, we can see it. A couple things going on here. Need to fix the hand so that it matches. So this is going to be one of the things that we have to work with. And I noticed that this controller has the hand attributes on it. Generally, in my classes, we make a different controller, like above the hand that would follow the joint and always follow it. That would have all of these finger attributes and such. But since it's already on here, it's not a problem. We can work with it. We're just gonna have to fix this in order to get it to still be the controller for the arm and fix the orientation of the joint and such. So basically when I select this and I use my orient tool, my rotation tool, we have the different connection here where the X is just basically offset from the controller. And there's the Z there. So you'll see the Z is like where the X would be, the X rotation. So this red handle should be on this side and so on and so forth. So we're going to fix that. And the first thing that I noticed is that when I select this joint, there's actually rotation data in there. So I'm going to take this guy first and disconnect everything because that's going to be one of the issues that we run into. So the hand controller, if I select the joint, come over here, hit F to frame it. It takes me to the left hand joint. I'll drop this down, looking for that orient constraint. And I'm going to go ahead and just hit delete after I select that orient constraint. Hit delete to get rid of it. So now it will not update based off of that. And this thing also is taking the handle with it. So the IK handle, so I have the IK handle over here, left arm IK. I'm going to drop this thing down and I'll find the point constraint. Left handle IK point constraint, I'll just delete that. That way I don't have to worry about it updating with this controller. So selecting the hand, I do have orientation data in here. This is where you have to be careful when you're first creating this rig to get everything in place and go to modify down to freeze transformation on all your joints. And that would have taken care of that data that has come through. You have to do it on everything. So the skeleton is the first thing you really pay attention to, get everything placed, and then at the root joint, which if we had done the whole entire skeleton, now this is a detached rig. I think that's what the tutorial has you doing. And on tutorial with a detached rig, this would just be constrained to the spine and such, and then you could also detach it. You could also have an attached rig that would be like the leg here where everything is following the spine and so on and so forth, okay? But since this is detached, you'd have to take each section of this, like that one is going to be a root joint for the entire arm, modify freeze transformations. And the problem that we're going to run into is that we get this error line down here saying that we have incoming connections. Incoming connections can be anything from constraints to set driven keys that you have on the fingers. So we have to work around that. Here's how we do it. We're going to take the joint and we're going to rotate it into place. So I'll just go ahead and do this and get it to kind of fit the hand a little bit better. I can have a bit of an offset, but not too much, but I'll just kind of go like that. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll just take my data for that joint and see if I can't repair that, because if I do this, modify freeze transformations, it's not going to let me do that joint, freeze the transformations on that joint, because it's reading its children and it's showing that the children have incoming connections. So what it does is it tries to, if I go to modify down to freeze transformation option box right here, it tries to work with, well, it works with a hierarchy. I think in older versions it used to show it, but what it looks for is all the children along down the line. So I'll just close this because I'm not seeing that option anymore. But it looks at all the children, and that's the problem that we're having. So what I can do is I can either take a screenshot of this, or I'll just go to like Notepad or WordPad. That works. That works. So for our rotation of X, that's going to be this value. So I'm just copying and pasting Let's just keep those together. Rx, Ry, Rz, Control C to copy it, Alt Tab to jump back over for Y, Alt V to paste, which that's what it should be there. And Z, since that's really easy, 1.19. Oh yeah. Okay, so I'll just kind of keep that there. I'll see if this will work, and maybe we won't have to plug in those values after all, but to get this to work, all of these should be detached already, like the constraints. I already got rid of the constraint node and whatnot. So I'll take this joint, and since I can't freeze the transformations, I need to do some disconnecting. So I'll come over here and go to my rigging section, and I'll go to skeleton, and I'm going to tear this off by clicking this. Okay, little perforated edge looking thing. Come over here and disconnect my joint. You'll see that I get another joint in place there. I might need that joint, I might not, but it says joint 1. I'll just hit delete on that joint 1 because I'm working with the hand joint here. And I'll do each one of these fingers to where this rotation of Y on this pinky finger, that's going to be a problem, but we can't freeze the transformations, so we're going to have to deal with the offsets. What I'll do is I'll just select it, hit Control C to copy it, okay? With this joint selected, I'll disconnect it because now I have the information in there. And it actually disconnected really nice. It stayed in place, which is good. A second ago when I tried this, the finger broke this way and it was facing that way. So I just plugged in that value that I copied right here and pasted it, and the finger went back into place. But I am disconnecting each one of these joints. So I'll click on this one, disconnect joint. And these are considered commands. So any command that I have done, if it's the last thing that I've done command-wise, I can select this other joint and hit the G key on my keyboard. So G is in Greg or good. G is the command, and I'll hit G again, and G is just connecting all of those joints, okay? I'll come to my outliner here, and I'll select the hand joint, shift click on this little plus sign, and all of these joints are extra joints that are added when I disconnect a joint. So I'll just delete those because I really don't need them. I'm going to reconnect the original joints to this guy here. And this one should be in place because we did the orientation and all that good stuff. My fingers are in place. This one's in place the way that it should be. My axes are good because the Z should be pointing forward like this. The X averaged out between the fingers and all that good stuff. So I'll select this guy, and now I can do modify at the top here down to freeze transformations. And bam, it's good. My orientation stayed. I have no rotational data. Perfect. Okay. So I'll take this guy, shift select its parent, and I'll go to edit down to parent, or just hit the P key, okay? And it's connected, and now I can do the same thing to these guys, except I can shift select all of my children and shift select the parent last, and I'll hit the P key this time, as in pretty good. So I'll hit the P, right? There we go. I didn't have a better one for P at the moment, so the P key. And that's really the same thing as going to edit down to parent, and we are good. The connections are good. I have this joint selected. There's no rotational data in there. So now we can go on to fixing this guy. Okay. So I'll close the skeleton thing, and since these are lined up pretty well, we could try just doing an orientation um, on this thing. So let's see, let me hit my rotational data. And so these ones are pretty good, pretty nicely lined up. What we could do to make sure that they are lined up good or that they are lined up perfect is we could take this, rotate it 90 degrees so that it's facing us, and then we're going to group it to itself. But first, I'm going to take this, go up to modify down to freeze transformations. Okay, and I checked this out beforehand, guys. This is one of the things that if I frame it from the top, it is lined up with my grid. Okay, so it's perfectly 90 degrees and lined up perfectly with my grid. So if I had created this at creation and rotated it like these guys right here, down here at the origin where it's first created, then it would end up just the way it is now. But I'm going to take it, I froze the transformations, I'm going to go up to the top here, And I'm going to go to Edit down to Group Option Box. So Edit Group Option Box. And I'm going to change the group pivot point from origin, so it doesn't jump to the origin, to center. And what it'll do is it'll center the pivot point of the group to this object that I have selected, or multiple objects if I had multiple objects selected. But I'm going to go ahead and hit group. And my group node now is, and I like to have my outliner floating, especially if you guys are rocking two monitors, it's great. But I'm just going to have it floating for the rest of this tutorial. And here's the group node, and I'll label it left hand capital GRP for group. You could type out group, it doesn't really matter. But the group node is going to get this handle into place. So I'll select the joint because I'm going to use the parenting fix, if you will, or trick to get this to line up. So I'll select the joint and I want the group node. So I'll come over here and control click on the left hand group to follow that orientation and match that orientation. So if I go up to constrain down to parent option box, turn off maintain offset. I've already done that, but I'll just turn it off again like that. Because normally parent constraint option is the only one that has maintain offset turned on. So I'll turn it off, go to add. It gets this into place based off of the orientation of the joint, okay? And that's because we turned off maintain offset. So it forced the group to update, and you'll see if I tap the up arrow to get to the group has now inherited the data of translation and rotation of the joint, okay? It's updated its data to match the joint's position and orientation in our Maya work scene, or so our world here in Maya. So now, the cool thing about that is that it leaves this guy perfect. It's oriented the same way that the joint is, and so on and so forth. And then we have a rotational data set to 0 and such. So the left-hand group, I will get rid of that parent constraint. So I'll drop down the group node, select the parent constraint, and hit delete because I only needed it to get this object in place. Okay, and now I can set up the rest of my stuff. So this left-hand control, I'll select it, shift select my joint, and you can select the bone right here to select the actual joint. You'll see if I click on the bone right here, it's really selecting the left-hand joint, okay? It's not selecting a bone or anything. These bones are just visual representations of our parenting order, showing that these are children because the little wedge here points to the child, and they're all children of this parent, and so on and so forth. So this one would be the left forearm roll, and so on and so forth. So I'll select this joint or this bone to select it, the joint. So I'll select this guy here, which is going to be our controller here, and I'm going to shift select the bone to select the wrist or the left hand joint. And I need to select it that way because I'm doing a constraint, right? So constrain orient option box to set up an orient constraint. Make sure that maintain offset is turned on, and I'll hit add. Not that it should matter if it wasn't, but we don't want anything else to possibly break because it's going to be fine just the way it is. And I'll test it first before I move on. I'll come over here, I'll select this guy, so I don't have the joint selected as well. And to test things, you have to select just this to deselect that joint. Come over here to the rotation, rotate X. Good, they're both rotating in X. Rotate Y, and what I'm doing is just clicking on one of these to highlight it, coming over here, holding down my middle mouse button, and dragging, and then undoing that move. So click on this with my left mouse button, come over here, hold down my middle mouse button, and drag left and right. Some drags will be up and down, but this is left and right. And all of them are following the orientations perfectly. So we're good with that part. Now all we have to do is, I'll hit the Q key. One thing I forgot to mention is I hit Q, which is my selection arrow right here, my selection tool. And in rigging, you definitely want to use that tool a lot just so that you don't accidentally orient something or translate it. Because you can select things with the translate tool and accidentally do that, and then you have something offset, which in rigging can be very bad. So I'll use my selection tool, select this guy, come over here, find my left arm IK, and I'll hold down Control and click on the left arm IK. Come back up to the top here, constraint down to point option box. Make sure that maintain offset is turned on and add that. Okay. And now I had the setup that you had before where I could just select this, and when I select the controller, I can move it And the point constraint is moving the IK handle. If I orient it, the rotation constraint or orient constraint is allowing us to control the wrist or hand joint. Okay, so that should be the fix that would work in this scenario. And I think that's about it. The only other connections that you might have to do, because all of these are still working, the middle fingers and stuff. And this is to just, uh, I was trying to preserve this controller instead of just deleting it and making a new one and slapping it up here. I was trying to preserve it because these are already connected, so now you don't have to redo these. But yeah, that should cover this part. The only other thing that you'd have to do is, I didn't check, is you're going to want to make an IKFK blend at the bottom of this guy. And that's to turn off the IK mode and go to FK mode. And you're also going to have to connect the IK FK blend to the orient constraint on the joint. Okay, but that could be for another tutorial, or I already have some made for another class if you guys need. So just let me know, okay? All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and end this tutorial. And my battery's about to die anyway, so that's perfect.